I will move on now to our third speaker, who is Adam Barmby, the founder and CEO of EAV Cargo. Adam, delighted you could join us here today. Again, once again, to start off, tell us a little bit more about you and tell us a little bit more about EAV Cargo. We are introducing you as the only e-cargo e-bike speaker, so perhaps a wider sense of how you feel the e-cargo bike sector fits into the electrification of trucks.
Yeah, my name's Adam Barmby. I'm a designer that can make things. I've been in business for over 12 years now, and EVE was created as a sort of a product that we could hit the market with from the ground up within the e-bike rules and regulations. Our vision was to transform urban and transportation, building an e-cargo solution that's intelligently engineered to power urban logistics and commercial use, and into the future personal transport as well. We wanted to sort of create this new generation vehicle that had sort of true zero emissions, and really sort of try and capture an audience that didn't necessarily want to transfer over to an e-cargo bike, but bridge the gap between an e-cargo bike and a van, and produce a vehicle that would instantly fit into most people's fleet mix. We're based in the UK. We're passionate about British manufacturing, and most importantly, sustainable manufacturing. So we use biomaterials in our bodywork production and recycled materials in our chassis and hardware, etc. And yeah, we're starting to ramp up our production facility again in the UK and looking to roll out into international sales and into different regions that, like Heidi was saying, we know there's a large opportunity in the US and particularly in Europe and Scandinavia. So.
Yeah, thanks so much indeed, Adam. I mean, it's a super exciting time for the e-bike sector, with governments announcing investment worldwide and that unlocking a lot of potential customers. Could you give us a flavor of the kind of customers that you're talking to at the moment?
Yeah, so we're dealing with large blue chip logistics and postal services, obviously the lowest hanging fruit in the market, but I think COVID-19 has really sort of changed people's perception of where our vehicle could be deployed, particularly in food, groceries, deliveries.
Adam, my next question to you is, tell us a little bit more about the first and last mile side and how you think that connects with the more traditional truck sector. What's your sense of that side of things?
Yeah, so I think what we wanted to do is bridge the gap between what the e-cargo bike can do for people, but create a vehicle that had user appeal and that sort of instant curbside appeal that a large blue chip corporation would want to put their branding on. And really, we see our vehicle replacing that small van within the inner city, and us working and cooperating with larger vehicles, much like the Volta vehicle that Rob is obviously promoting at the moment. So that link between first and last mile is going to be very important going into the future, and actually creating a solution that gets from that first mile through to the last mile without it being super complicated or having to work with these legacy logistics companies that are sort of very fixed in their way of thinking. I think by opening up the design box, as it were, and trying to innovate new ways in which you can get product from out of city into inner city with the minimum amount of changeovers of vehicle is going to be key. And going from a very large vehicle to a very sort of small vehicle and operating what's known as the hub and spoke model is very much where we see our vehicle thriving in not just sort of post COVID-19, but right now, and before.
Thanks so much indeed, Adam. I took the time to look up the verb to truck rather than the noun truck, and I think it nicely describes your model around that hub and spoke, first mile, last mile approach to things. The verb to truck is to roll along, especially in an easy and untroubled way, which is, I think, how you see the role of e-cargo bikes connecting up with the traditional trucks sector. So a last question from me. I know you're an industrial designer by background, and your technology is remarkable. Tell us a little bit more about the technology in the EVE e-cargo bikes.
So yeah, I mean, there's two sides to it. We've on one hand tried to be brutally simple in our design. You know, this vehicle has to be very low maintenance. One of the largest issues with e-cargo bikes is that they're incredibly high maintenance, and they're not necessarily built for the operation they're being used for. We've very much we're a group of automotive engineers that have engineered down from a van to a bike, rather than started out as a bike manufacturer and tried to engineer it up to a heavy goods vehicle of some description. So we've kept it very simple in our engineering, but coming forward into the future, there's the obvious app-based connectivity and our sort of driver and route optimization that we're working with a few people on. One of the major things that we're looking at doing as well is this route mapping and trying to capture the big data that large corporations actually require to, again, further optimize their delivery methods. Because it's not like picking up Google Maps and using the same routes through the city centre that the van does. We can very much optimize through cycle routes and operate through pedestrian zones, and it just completely changes the landscape of your delivery using a vehicle like ours, and it really does improve efficiency by we have figures between 20 and 30%. When compared with normal vans in inner city, similar scenarios, both in London and places like Amsterdam, for example.
Very good. I think there you've answered a number of questions have come in to you from the online audience. You've answered one of them from Divak Ashok, who asked, what data sets do you feel important for e-cargo delivery vehicles? So I'll move on to another question from Richard Scrace, who asks, how important will it be for your vehicle to run in cycle lanes?
I mean, it is important. Obviously, there are massive efficiencies in running in the cycle lanes. There is a clear fine line between this being a vehicle and a bike. Clearly, it is a bike because you're pedaling in order to get your electrical assistance. We're a meter wide, so it's not a very large vehicle. But equally, we've had to make sure that from a design point of view, it's accepted by bicycles as well as cars, because this is going to be on the roads as well as being in cycle lanes. So we've had to design and develop it and engineer it to be used in both scenarios.
Very good. Finally, there's a testing question from an anonymous attendee who asks, can you give some real world examples of commercial viability of e-cargo bikes? Is it profitable?
So, I mean, all of the figures that we've got so far and the data that we're gathering from mainly European countries and the customers that we have out in Scandinavia, they have the infrastructure already. So for them, it's a very easy business model for them to sell, especially for the postal and logistics services, so that there's no issue there. In the UK, we're still a bit behind on our infrastructure. So from a real world point of view, I think we are mainly looking at European and US adoption, and the UK will follow suit. Given there's just been £2 billion worth of UK investments pledged by the government, that's clearly going to get used and optimised over the next year or two. I think there's an initial 250 million to be used immediately. So pop-up cycleways are going to be pretty key. Post and sort of during COVID-19, getting people back to work and getting goods moved in and out of inner city centres.
Thanks very much indeed, Adam, and thanks very much indeed to our online audience for those insightful questions.